Hey, Miss Clavel here. First, I want to apologize for my voice. I do have a little bit of a cold going on, so I might sound a little bit snuffy. But in either case, I want to walk you through how to find passages in Schoolnet that have more than one question, that have different passages that have different alignment when it comes to the standard. So I'm going to show you how to do both of that. First of all, you'll notice that I am signed into my actual instance of Schoolnet. You'll realize that I have a leadership role, which you'll see right here. Most people that are probably going to be watching this are going to have a teacher role. So there's really not much difference between the two. You'll see here that I've got two things as far as assessment admin and instructional materials admin, but honestly, I don't really mess with those much. But we're going to dive right in. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to click the down arrow on assessments. You're going to scroll down here and you'll see where it says items, rubrics, and passages, and you want to click find. Anytime an ELA teacher or instructional coach or anybody who's looking for passages, honestly, who want to add it to some sort of a formative or summative assessment has to go this route. You will not be able to make an express test. This is the best practice as far as finding passages and creating assessments, whether it be formative or summative that include passages. So we'll click find. And then from here, this should look familiar to you. This is your item central. Instead of being at items though, we want to click on passages. And then we'll just go through the normal from the left to the right kind of thing. I typically stop at the standards. I'm going to run through a fifth grade scenario. So I will click subject. I'm going to click English language literature. Now, another thing that you might notice is I have 9,252 passages. You might have a different number. As you know, Schoolnet is by different districts. So every district has their own instance of Schoolnet. So also I have a leadership role. So I'm also seeing benchmark items, which you'll see here. I'm going to obviously filter those out. However, don't worry about the numbers. You should still have a plethora of different passages to choose from. So next I'm going to choose grade. And like I said, I'm going to run through a fifth grade scenario here. So I'm going to choose fifth grade. And then I'm going to click standards. Here's where it gets real interesting. You can choose multiple standards here, and you'll notice that some of you guys might have noticed this already, some of the passages will be double. That's because they're associated with that particular standard for their questions. So we're going to go ahead and run through that scenario. So we're going to click on reading. One of the lowest performing standards in the state of North Carolina is informational text, and pretty much this first one right here, it kind of nails it. I like to click the plus signs until I can't get any further. In this particular situation, it really doesn't make any difference, but in other subject areas, it does. So again, just doing best practices here, I'm going to click all the way down to RI 5.1, and then I'm going to click View Results. Now, depending on how many items are there, it's going to dictate how long it takes for it to pull this information. You won't see a little circle here in the middle. You'll see it here at the top to let you know that it's thinking. So here you go, right up here, you'll see that it's thinking and it's trying to pull these things together. So we'll give this just a second. As you can see, this is taking a little bit longer than I anticipated, but it is rolling. So we'll give this just a second, and I'm not sure if you guys saw my little mute. I muted myself so I could blow my nose. Okay, so here we go. We've got the things up here. Now, a couple of things that you'll notice versus the last update. So previous to the last update, what you saw was the items here would say one item, and then you'd have to scroll all the way to the bottom in order to get the items, or excuse me, the passages that were associated with the most items. Now, remember, I only chose one standard in this particular scenario. We are going to run through the other one as well. However, I personally like to put all of my passages on the same page, and that's for two reasons. One, because more than likely I'm going to choose more than one passage. Obviously, I'm not going to choose a bunch, and I'm definitely not going to choose one that has 61 items. However, I might like this passage. Know that everything that's in Schoolnet is editable. You can edit anything to include the passages and all the questions that are associated with those passages. In order to get everything on the same page, I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I apologize for going real quick there, and you'll see this little bar here that says results per page. I'm going to click 500. As I mentioned, there's more than one reason. The second reason is if I choose more than one item, I want to be able to put those on the test. So by clicking more than one box, and let's say I go to the next page, I'll lose my previous page clicks. Also, and actually that's kind of still the first reason. The second reason is I like doing cross collaborative. In other words, if I know in, let's say, science class, which is also informational text, that they're studying ecosystems, I have a little trick where I can do a search within the passages for some of the things for ecosystems, such as vocab and that sort of thing. And I'll show you that here in just a second. Again, I've chosen the largest number that it'll allow me, which will get all the items to the same page. Also, you'll see here the little spinning. So that's running through. So we'll give that just a second. And again, it takes a little bit longer when you're trying to put all the items on the same page, especially for passages, because they are bigger and they do take more data. You'll also notice here at the bottom that my very last passage has some Spanish items. I'm going to actually show you how to weed those out as well. So once this gets going, it should drop us back to the top of the page once it's done. But I'm going to go ahead and scroll up. In order to weed out the Spanish items, you're going to click Open Filters. And we'll get through that as soon as it loads these. And again, I apologize for the delay. It should not take this long for you. Here we go. I actually have two screens going right now, so that takes a little bit of my RAM, so that might be part of the problem there. But here we go. So I've got all the items on the same page. Like I said, if I scroll, you'll see all 155 items that I have selected. First things first, I want to, and I'm not sure why it's not showing you everything here. Let me go ahead and zoom out just a little bit. There we go. So over here you can see I've got 61 items for this first, and as I scroll down, you'll notice there's less items as I scroll down. So I typically go to about halfway, and that kind of gets me at the 10 items, 9 items. That's typically how it goes, regardless of what number you have. The halfway point normally puts you at about 10 items. So first thing, I want to go ahead and open my filters, and I want to change the language. So here I'm going to go to question language, and I'm going to choose English. The other thing that you'll notice in some of these items is that you're going to have open response. I personally don't use those. So you can also change it to where you only have multiple choice. This is going to weed out a lot of that stuff. You'll notice I still have my standards up here. I've chosen multiple choice. I've chosen English. And again, that's right here, right next to cognitive demand level. You'll see question language. You're going to choose English, and then if I remember correctly, it's right down here, apply filter. It's easy to miss because it's not the typical blue. So let's go ahead and apply that filter and give it a second. Okay, so again, sorry for the mute. I sneezed and then I had to blow my nose again. So here we go. Now we have weeded out all of the Spanish items, and we have also weeded out all the open response items. You'll notice here that now I've narrowed it down to 129 passages. So from there, you'll notice, like, again, if I scroll down about halfway, again, when we do that, we're going to have to put everything back on the same page. I totally forgot about that. So let's put everything back on the same page. Anytime you change the search settings, it kind of goes back to default as far as its viewing options. I was going to say that bar looked a little small there. So we're going to get everything back on the same page. We're going to scroll halfway down till we get about 10 items and take a look at some of these passages. While I'm there, I'm also going to show you how I go about finding my little trick about finding cross-curricular kind of stuff. Now, I will say it does not work every time. Sometimes there's just not passages in there for that, which is fine. But I always like to check because reiterating what the students are seeing in other classrooms is just a win-win situation. As we know as teachers, the more exposure they have to the content, regardless of the subject area, the more likely they are to remember it. So here we go. We've got everything on the same page. We've got our 129 items. I'm going to scroll about halfway down, like I said, and here we go. We're at 10 items. So if I hit Control F, which is fine, you'll see this little box pops up. In my son's class currently, and he's in 5th grade, they're studying ecosystems and clouds. I'm just going to type in ecosystems, and you'll notice that there's 24 instances of the word ecosystems in here as far as a passage. This one here is the beaver. This one looks real interesting. I think I'm going to take a look at this one. It has 18 items associated with it, which is okay because I can weed those items out. So I'm going to go ahead and click View. And this will pull this passage up as well as all the items that are associated with that passage. Here we go. So here's the passage. And remember what I said. You can edit passages in Schoolnet. So if you feel like you want to chunk this, if you want to break it down for the kids, if you want to bold anything, underline anything, you can always do that. So I'm going to scroll down here. You'll notice it really does have that many items. You'll see a little box here with the just letting you know what passages are associated with these kind of multiple choice questions. So you'll see that, and I can actually view these by clicking View. All right, so here we go. Here is the item. So you'll notice here that this particular item is associated with 2 separate passages. So the students would have to read the beaver and the passage V in order to answer this question. You'll notice here that both passages are here. And then if you scroll down, you'll see all the times in this particular item that it was used. So I'm not sure if you guys as teachers have access to this information as you see item test history. However, it will be, if you do, it will be indicative of your own district. So in my district, this item has actually been used here recently. They really like this question because the kids are taking a look at that. So I'm going to go back. And I want to take a look at some of the questions that are associated with this. Obviously, I've got more than one standard here, but I want to look at the questions themselves. So here we go. We've got the questions. And you'll notice here at the top it says expand all. This is one of my favorite things, especially when I'm looking at a new item that I've never looked at before. So I'm going to expand all of these, and then I can actually expand the answer choices as well. Typically, I get a really good, at least in my mind, and it might be different for you guys, I get a really good indication of whether or not I like the question just by looking at the question stem, right? So which sentence from the beaver is an opinion? So these kind of things, I can associate this kind of question directly with our clarifying objective to match our depth of knowledge level. So for example, in this particular standard that we're associating with, which I'm not sure if it's still the top note, it's not, this particular standard where the students have to draw comparisons, or they have to draw specific information out of the text to make inferences and understand details. So I would be able to go through here and look at, like this particular question, how does the author support the point that the beaver moves easily in water? That is definitely aligned to this standard. Whereas this one here this is a different standard. This one here talks about it being an opinion piece. This isn't necessarily, well, actually it probably could. So I'm going to go ahead and click this and take a look at this question just to make sure. And I know my ELA folks are probably like, no, Tika, that is right. That's okay. Okay, so this particular question has been used several times. I can click on the properties of this question. It'll tell me where it's coming from. I can see when it's been used and that sort of thing. So this is a Certica item that aligns directly with that. I can also preview this item as well. And I can also expand the text in order to kind of match it up. Again, that's how you go about choosing. I can add this item to a test. It will associate the passage with it. I personally don't go about doing it that way. What I do is I expand all of the questions and I just hit the back, and so that I can look all the questions again. I choose the questions that I want to keep. And then what I do is I go through and add those items to a test. So I'll show you how to do that. And that's really no different than probably a lot of you guys have been doing. So again, how I went there is I expanded. I can actually go and see what multiple choices they have associated with this one. But what I want to see, or what I want to do is I want to go through and I'm going to uncheck, and let's say I just want this one, and this one, these 3 questions to be associated with that particular passage. And then it says add passage and selected items to test. That's what I typically do. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and click that, and then should come the Power Page. Either you can add it to a test that you've already created, or you can create a new assessment. I'm going to go ahead and go through the process of creating a new assessment. Obviously, you wouldn't name it that, but that's okay. We're going to do English Language Arts. This is going to be 5th grade. I default to district benchmark because I'm leadership. However, you guys should be able to see that you should default to either my classroom or shared classroom assessment, which is fine. This one right here is probably most important because this is how we get our standards aligned, and that's where this is. And then I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to go ahead and generate this test. There we go. So from here, you'll see that I've got this passage, or excuse me, I've got the item here where I can see all of the items, and then I can actually go, and then I have, as I said, I have all the items here that I've clicked. Now you'll notice here with the 2 little things that I've chosen this particular item that has 2 passages associated with it. So you need to make sure that both passages are there, and you'll notice that they are. You can click this. You'll notice the little pencil here that says you can edit these items. So again, you can edit anything in Schoolnet, and then of course you have your standard here. Now let's go through the scenario of adding a passage that has more than one standard aligned to it. So I'm going to go ahead and add an item, and I want to go from Item Central. And this should look familiar to you. I've already done this, but now I want to choose a different standard. So let's say I want to choose this one, and I'm going to uncheck this one, right? So this one has 139 passages. I'm going to click View Results, and again, it's thinking. Okay, sorry about the mute, guys. Again, had to blow my nose. So from here, you'll notice that I've got my 5th grade, my English Language Arts, my RI 5.2. Now remember, one of the passages that we chose from the last time was called the Beaver. Now I'm going to have to go all the way down and put everything on the same page. So it's thinking. You'll notice that there's also Spanish items in here again. Again, every time you go back to Item Central, you're going to have to go through that open filters situation and weed all of those out. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, just like I was looking for the word ecosystems by hitting Control F to find some vocab. I'm actually going to go in and try to do the same thing by finding the passage that was associated with RI1. Like I said, it should be able to pull it up if there are items associated with that passage that match this this particular standard. Okay, here we go. We've got everything on the same page. The beaver. Oh, look, here we go. Here's the beaver again. And remember before, when we looked at the beaver, there were 18 items associated with it. I have 18 items again. When any time that you pull up a passage, you are going to be able to see items that are associated with it. And when I say items, I'm talking about the questions from different standards. There we go, brain fart. So different standards you're going to be able to see. So there's 18 total items written for this particular one. And you'll notice, like I said, some of these have multiple. And you'll notice that all of these are what? Very much similar to the last one. So did I have to go through all this? No. Anytime that you find it in one place, you'll be able to find it in another. Here is the catch though, and why I like doing this. One, to double check, because you and I both know that sometimes there's things in Schoolnet that don't properly align. Two, I always like to go in and make sure that there might be another passage that I prefer better, right? So I always like to go in double. The one point that I cannot emphasize enough is you've got to know your content, because sometimes, I'm telling you what, some of this stuff looks so close, but it's not quite there. This happens to me all the time in science, which is where I spend most of my time. It happens all the time. So make sure that you're double checking that. But like I said, you're more than welcome to just kind of replay this. Everything that I mentioned to you before, as far as how to weed out items, how to find anything as far as keywords or vocabulary. And again, once you find a passage in one particular area, you're going to find all the items associated with that passage. I hope this helps you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Bye.